Rusty Wallace Hyundai. That's where my wife and I bought our new 2025 Santa Fe, and she says it's the best car she's ever had. We couldn't be happier with everything. Their team was great through the whole process, and their service department is top-notch. Check out their new location at 505 Callahan Drive in Knoxville, Tennessee, or at rustywallacehyundai.com.
I mean, I do fly. And they're like, well, what do you fly? I fly helicopters. Oh, okay. Well, could you ever, like, if you want, could you be a real pilot sometime? Like, look, I mean, I've spent a lot of time trying to learn how to actually get myself off the ground. Like, I can fly. I'm a pilot.
Collin Hubbard, pilot. Dude, when you put down pilot, do you have to like little things after your name?
So the
P-I-L-O-T.
Yeah. So this is like a big running joke I've had for a decade or more. I fly EMS helicopters or helicopter area ambulance, depending what article you're reading or what magazine you picked up. Yeah. And I fly with clinicians, we call them clinicians because they're paramedics, they're nurses, and they have, I don't know, every letter of the alphabet, some combination of it behind their names. And there's 12 of them behind some names. And you're like, oh, I'm a doctor of nursing, I'm a whatever. And they've all got initials for everything they do. And there's so many of them behind it. And I'm like, I don't know what any of that means. I know that you're a flight nurse on my helicopter. I'm a pilot. That's, there are initials, like I have an ATP, which means airline transport pilot, but it doesn't change my job. It's still just, I'm a pilot. You know what I mean?
If you go to school to draw blood, like you get some initials after your name.
Yeah, I would assume
I don't have any initials. I mean, I don't know what I got to do to get some. But.
Yeah. There are initials, but like I said, it's just, if you ask me what I do, I say pilot. If I fill out a form, I'm a pilot. I'm not an
I feel
ATP,
like you'd have to put
whatever.
Like a helicopter pilot, like specify what kind of pilot you are.
No, somebody asks, I'll say, yeah, I fly helicopters or whatever, but normally I just say pilot.
When I think of a pilot, the first thing I think of is like a Delta airline, like catch me if you can type guy,
I've had people ask, I've actually had people ask, like when they say, oh, what do you do? Or what do you, I see people from, when we were growing up, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm a pilot. And
now, with Delta?
Are you a real pilot? Like a real pilot? And I'm kind of like, I don't know what a fake pilot. I'm not, I'm not the dude from Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, RC cars out there.
Yeah, I do fly. And they're like, well, what do you fly? I fly helicopters. Oh, okay. Well, could you ever, like, if you want, could you be a real pilot sometime? Like, look, I spent a lot of time trying to learn how to actually get myself off the ground. Like, I can fly. I'm a pilot. So it's, it's a little jab sometimes, but.
Sometimes, dude, that sounds awful.
Not everybody's like that. Some people are like, oh, helicopters, that's really cool. Those are hard to fly, right? Yeah. And then you're like, yeah, they're way harder than anything else ever put in the sky.
Everybody's an airplane pilot. Like anyone that wants to be a pilot is like, oh yeah, I got an airplane to fly.
Yeah.
But
you get that.
I've heard helicopter pilots, like even people that know how to fly, like they're so backwards, and I know nothing about them. But a lot of like an airplane, I could play video games and hop in one and feel like I could fly one. But a helicopter is backwards, right?
I wouldn't say
not
backwards.
You.
I wouldn't say backwards. It's just different. Airplanes are, the thing with airplanes is they're less expensive. I don't want to say cheaper because there's nothing cheap about anything in aviation, but they're less expensive to operate and to maintain. So owning an airplane is a lot more achievable than owning a helicopter. Even if you get like the least expensive helicopter, it's quite a bit more than
why would that be
average airplane.
My father-in-law had one of those bubble helicopters back in the 70s and 80s and flew those.
Dude, that's what you learned how to fly in, right?
Something like that. I think what she's talking about, I don't know for sure because there's a lot of helicopters that you might call a bubble, but what I think of when you say a bubble helicopter is like the MASH Bell 47. It's an old, Korean War style helicopter. It's just a 2-seater or 3-seater, and it's not a lot of utility in it, but I learned to fly on a small 2-seat gas engine helicopter.
It was funny, man. So in high school, a lot of people talk about what they want to do. Mm-hmm. I think I said I want to be on the cover of Men's Health magazine. That was my only goal. But
I still want to do that.
Right, but you said I want to be a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long after high school, man. You were down there doing it. And I imagined, like we went down to visit, me and Terry did, my wife, and I imagine like you're flying like some big old helicopters, but dude, we were out and this little bitty like bumblebee looking thing with clear sides and clear fronts come buzzing down. I was like, yeah, that's what we fly. And that's exactly what you're talking about. But that's not what I imagine.
Yeah.
But dude, what's the process of saying, I want to be a helicopter pilot to actually fly in helicopters?
So, like you said, we were growing up, and I always wanted to be a helicopter pilot. And I don't know exactly where it came from, but
you were just looking for something different.
At some point, I was like, "Yeah, helicopter pilot. That sounds cool. I'm going to do that.
Get some ladies.
I'm going to pick up chicks." And that didn't like that's not what happens. Like guys are way more impressed with helicopter pilots than girls are, which whatever. But it's not what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
But
I feel like that's with everything, though.
Yeah. But so. I said I'm going to be a helicopter pilot, and I did my research, and I tried my best to figure out how to achieve that goal. And I had a lot of help from my family getting me down there and getting started. But
where at? You said get down there.
I went to a flight school that's no longer there anymore. At the time, it was called Helicopter Adventures Inc.
Okay,
and it was at the time a very large civilian helicopter flight school. Like I said, it doesn't exist anymore. There were a couple other big civilian flight schools as well that also don't exist anymore. So I think it was a little bit easier, when I went through to find somewhere to go and actually do it. But the hardest part of it is cost. Like it's not like going to college. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to get a student loan and go to helicopter flight school." That didn't exist, and it still doesn't as far as I know. There are some colleges I think that offer helicopter programs now. But at the time, there wasn't really much else for me.
Everybody joins the Army or Navy or something to fly, right?
Yeah, that's I don't know if it's easier or harder or what, but it's
a different path for sure.
And I don't even want to say like the cheaper alternative because you're making sacrifices to do that as well. But that is an avenue that a lot of people take to become helicopter pilots.
And dude, I remember one of the first conversations we had when you were talking about, this guy was in the Army, he flew and coming in with all this experience. And I thought those were going to be like the dudes that knew.
It's just a different avenue to get to the same place.
But I feel like their method in learning it's a different plan, right? It's a different action.
Yeah, they're focused on a different thing. Their mission is completely different than anything they're going to do in the civilian world. So obviously, flying a helicopter translates. It's a helicopter, no matter if it's paid for by the Army or you. But they fly the same, but what you're doing with them is going to be a little different. So
yeah, I feel like that'd be taking a NASCAR race car driver and be like, "Yeah, man, he sucks at driving down to Food City,"
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a fair comparison. Jeff Gordon's probably not the best school bus driver. You know what I mean?
Right, but if I drove school buses and that's all I've learned, like I might be a better school bus driver, but he knows his business of driving a car.
Right. I've flown with a lot of pilots over the years. I've been flying for 20 years now, I guess. And I've flown with a lot of people, and I've flown with some real duds, and I've flown with some pilots that are just, squared away. And I've flown with duds from the military, and I've flown with duds that learned like I did.
Duds everywhere, man.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, I don't think, where you learn. I think what matters is what you put into, your learning. And that's with anything,
Hey, this is Pastor Corey. Would love for you to go check out our podcast, the Just Jesus Podcast. And if also you would like to go on our website, justjesusnow.com, you can check out some of our church services and some of our merch. Be blessed.
Yeah. So what do you think was the hardest part of it? Like, I remember at one point you told me that they do tests of like engine failure tests. Like they just shut everything down and you're just free floating, right?
Yeah. So, you have to practice emergency procedures, and that wasn't that scary to me. Like, you're not shutting the engine down, you're keeping it running. You're just kind of turning the fuel off or limiting the fuel and kind of coasting, right? And trying to land without the engine powering the...
That sounds like a death fall.
Well, I mean, it's called an auto rotation. We don't call them death falls.
That's not the appropriate jargon. We're going to stick with it.
I don't think a lot of people would sign up to death fall. Sir, we're going to fly you over to this hospital real quick. Hopefully we don't death fall. That's what got you here. I didn't mind that. I think it's fun, and when I was a flight instructor, you're doing them all day long because like I don't want to say that's the most important thing, but like.
So you've taught as well?
Oh yeah, I was a flight instructor for several years. But when you're doing it over and over and over again, you get really good at it. So if you actually have an engine failure, which a lot of pilots at some point in their careers will have or have had, and that muscle memory, just doing it all the time helps. But that didn't scare me, when I was going through training. What scared me the most was so when we were. Yeah, to preface all this, I had never been in an aircraft at all. I had not anything. I'd never been in an airplane. And I said, I'm going to be a helicopter pilot. And I moved 700 miles away from my home at 20 years old.
Here we
and
go.
I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to do this, whether hopefully I don't death fall or whatever, And I didn't know how. I kind of had an idea of, I read some books on how they worked, but I struggled for the first few weeks. Like, what's going on here?
Who wouldn't? Yeah.
But we did this maneuver called settling with power. And it's not really, settling with power is not a maneuver. It's an aerodynamic issue. And anyway, you have to practice getting into it and getting out of it. So you know how to get out of it in the event that you get into it. And you go up to a pretty high altitude so that you have time to fix the problem, right? And we had, up to this point, been doing everything at like 500 to 1,000 feet in this, 2-seat helicopter it's the size of a go-kart inside. It's very small, and you're shoulder to shoulder with another person. And they're like, okay, climb us up to 2,500 feet. And I was like, I've never been to 2,500 feet. This is the highest I've ever been away from Earth. This is the farthest I've been from Earth ever in my life. And I get up there, and this helicopter also goes really slow. And the thing with flying is, the higher you are, the relative motion seems much slower because you're farther away from anything moving. So you don't know how fast you're going. 70 knots at 2,500 feet looks like you're barely moving. 70 knots on the ground is pretty quick. Like, that's interstate speeds, right? Well, at 2,500 feet, I'm doing 70 knots. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not doing anything. I'm moving. This helicopter is very slow. It's very small. I don't have doors on at this point. I don't know if I said that, but I don't have doors in this go-kart. And they're like, okay, slow down to 15 knots or whatever. I don't remember what she said, but basically slow down below ETL, which is an aerodynamic thing. So I was like, okay, I'll slow down below ETL. I'm already stopped. I don't know how slow I can go, but I look at this, the airspeed indicator, and it says 70 knots. And I was like, well, I guess I can go slower. And I start slowing down, and I was like, oh my God, this is uncomfortable. We're stopping in the middle of the sky at 2,500 feet. What's happened next? The only thing I've ever experienced this high off the ground is at an amusement park, and the next thing that happens is I drop out of the sky. So I was getting kind of nervous, and the next thing that happened was we dropped out of the sky, and that was terrifying as well. And I was just super uncomfortable the whole time. So we had to do that a bunch of times.
How many weeks into training was that?
Oh, that was probably maybe a month or so into training, month or two maybe. But we had to do that a bunch of times in order for me to get comfortable enough to perform the maneuver correctly. And after that, it didn't really bother me because I understood what was going on. But
when you're that high up, do you feel like a pressure change? Can you feel like it's tightness or
not really? Not at 2,500 feet.
That's not that high, really.
No, it's not that high.
Well, it sounds that high.
Like, how high is the Empire State Building? That's one of the taller places that everybody goes to.
It's not 2,500 feet.
Is it not?
No. I don't know how many stories it is.
I don't know.
1,454 feet.
So it'd be double the Empire State Building.
Almost double, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty darn high, man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, good job, Savannah. Thank you. So, dude, she sounded impressed that you were an instructor. And one thing that I thought was cool is that that's really one of the first and only jobs you can get after coming out of flight school, right?
Yeah, so that's the challenge of the civilian route that I took as opposed to the military route. When you're in the military, you usually, depending on what's going on, obviously, if there's a war going on, you're getting deployed, you're doing a lot more flying. Those guys will get enough time in the military that when they get out, they retire or whatever, they can get a higher paying or, higher experienced job like what I do now. But as a civilian, when you're coming out of flight school, you have 200 hours or 160 hours, and nobody's going to hire you to fly, children and people around. Like,
what do you do?
Yeah. So, okay, well, you can teach other people how to fly a helicopter. I don't know how that's safer, but that's usually one of the first jobs you get out of flight school as a flight instructor.
Well, you're just teaching like book stuff, like stuff you just learned. You're just turning around and teaching someone else, right?
And you're teaching flying.
Yeah, you're in the air, I guess.
You're going to teach them how to fly the helicopter. But yeah, I would say that the benefit of doing it right then is you learn all that stuff, and you just keep teaching it, and you keep
that's how you learn
learning
better.
more, and the knowledge that I had when I left flight instruction, I don't want to say that it was more than I have now, but like if you asked me a question, I didn't have to hesitate. I didn't have to go back to the vault to figure out what you were talking about. I knew the answer because I talked about it all day, every day. Now, if you ask me a question about a simple, aerodynamic issue, I can tell you, but I might have to go like, and search,
Of course,
far back in the trunk to figure out what you're talking about. And, a lot of people ask questions, and sometimes I try to figure out how to say things in a language that they'll understand without trying to sound like I'm some
just
pretentious.
throwing a bunch of jargon out there.
Yeah. But, now it's even a little bit harder because I'm like, I have to remember how to explain this in
That's
my
when
terms.
you got to say,
and then,
let me figure out a way to break this down. Give me just a minute to think about it.
yeah, let me figure out how to make
It'd be
this
like having a
understandable.
16-year-old that just learned how to drive.
Yeah.
Teach people how to drive.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be scary.
Yeah.
Or at least with my kids, it would be.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I've had people say, I don't think this is the best idea. In some places, that's not what happens. I had a Canadian student when I was, I'm 21, 22 years old. I had a student who was in his 50s, and he was like, "Well, yeah, in Canada, they don't do this." And I don't know what goes on in Canada right now. I don't live there. But he's like, "Oh, our instructors up there have tens of thousands of hours." And I'm like, "That's cool. I got tens of hours." Let's do a death fall.
That's what we call it these days.
So
You're going to think that every time something like that happens now.
Well, hold on. Now, as an experienced pilot that you're just flying like as a job, you don't do death falls on the regular,
you don't.
right?
I mean, not so.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose. So I'm flying bigger helicopters now, and we don't really practice them. We don't really practice a whole lot in the helicopter. We practice a lot of stuff in the simulator, but I fly a twin engine helicopter. It has 2 engines, and it has really good single engine capabilities. It'll hover with 1 engine, so I don't have to worry about death falls as much, or auto rotations for anybody watching at home.
That jargon, man.
I'm gonna
be right with it.
Yeah, the FAA is going to call me tomorrow.
We don't do death falls.
Sir, there's no such thing as a death fall.
Tell Savannah that.
Sorry, guys.
So do you still do the underwater stuff that you did when you flew out of the Gulf?
No. So you're Hewitt training, helicopter underwater egress training.
So you flew
Hewitt, I guess.
or oil rigs, I guess is that what you did? What would you call that?
It's the offshore oil industry.
Okay.
We just call it
We've
flying
been watching
offshore.
Landman. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't do helicopters on that one, but
No, I mean, they do, but now you're not flying people. So those guys are out in like Odessa, Midland, Texas, and there's nothing there. So if one of those guys get hurt, they get a helicopter.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of helicopters out there.
Right, but you did it just for transport.
I did, we did offshore
Yeah.
transport, flying people and equipment to oil rigs offshore. It's just one of the. I mean, there's a lot of jobs you can do as a helicopter pilot. There's not a lot of jobs. There's some jobs you can do as a helicopter pilot. There's a number. I don't know what it is, but it's not that big.
So tell us about that Hewitt training you were talking about.
Helicopter underwater egress training.
That was awesome when you were talking about, which I'm a water guy. I like water.
I liked it. A lot of people don't like
I
it.
don't know what this is. That's cool.
You get into depending on where you do it at. I've seen some. So I'll start with where I did it.
Yeah.
It was a very nice facility. The heated pool, they were trying to create the Gulf of Mexico, and it was warmer than the Gulf of Mexico. It was very comfortable. And they were like, go get warmed up in the pool, which you don't do if you go down in the Gulf of Mexico. But they're like, go warm up in this pool, and then we're going to put you inside this helicopter, this mock-up of a helicopter, and the seats are, like helicopter seats, and the seat belts are shoulder harnesses, whatever. They have it set up for different helicopters, so whatever helicopter you fly, you can do it. You can do the training simulating that helicopter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they take this, this little simulator thing, and they dunk it underwater, and then they turn it upside down while you're strapped in. Like, you can't.
You're in it.
You're in it. Yeah, you're strapped in, and you're in it, and you can't do anything until you're completely upside down, and then you have to try to get out. Because, like, worst case scenario.
Is it like a car, though? It's not taking on water immediately? You got to wait for the water to come on?
It takes on water immediately. There's holes in it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, helicopters aren't, like, they're not as airtight as cars would be. Like, these things leak water when you're flying. Like, they're not, it's weird. It's hard. Anyway, they're mostly just fiberglass, bodies.
They're not made to be floating in the water.
So
yeah.
You just have to hold your breath?
Yeah. And then get out.
You can hold your breath for a really long time, though.
Well, I could at one point. I haven't had to do that in a long time.
We won't ask you to do it here, but how long did you hold your breath at one point in time?
At one point, I think I was a little over 2 minutes.
Because we used to talk a lot of
seems
smack.
like you'd be like, oh yeah, 2 minutes isn't that long. I can do anything for 2 minutes. Not hold your breath. You can't.
I'll start a timer right now. Okay.
No, I'm not going to do it.
No, I'm not,
I'm not doing that.
But I want to tell people when 2 minutes is up. 2 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
I got it.
So anyway, you get in this thing, you turn underwater, you go upside down, and then you're trying to. You have to do different maneuvers. Like, you have to get out, and then you have to get out your window, and then you have to at one point get out and cross cockpit exit, like get out the other window, and then you have to. And one of them you have to get out, but you have to wait until the person beside you gets out, and then you have to follow them out, and you're like. It was fine for me because, 2-minute breath holder. Like, I'm good.
How deep are you at this point?
I think the pool was 9-10 feet deep or something.
Were you at the bottom of it, or
no? You're just under the surface,
just underwater? Okay, yeah.
And there are people in there that they're not strong swimmers, and people that panic. And
you're in all that gear too, and that's heavy.
Well, you're in a vest. You have to have shoes or boots on when you're doing it. So you're in normal clothes. They're trying to simulate what would actually happen. But hopefully, the guy beside you is not panicking or freaking out. He's not one of those that panics.
Because a lot of people do.
Yeah, and you get under there and waiting on this guy, and you're like, hey man, let me help you out over there. Like, what's going on?
We only got 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's with me not moving.
I've got 2 minutes. I don't care how much time you've got. Like,
the rescue mission is going to take a little bit more energy from me.
Yeah. So
did they tell you can help each other?
No, you can't help anybody. That's the point is you have to be able to get out. That's right. And that person that's in there with you also has to be able to get out. They're usually, it's not just pilots. There's pilots in there. There's oil workers because they fly on the helicopter, so they have to do the training.
Jeez, that's 2 minutes. That's a long time.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. I can't do it now. I'm sure. I'm sure I can't.
30 seconds
Maybe
is a long time.
I don't know. I'm not going to try.
Yeah, we won't do it now. But I remember back when The Guardian, that movie came out.
Yeah.
And they were treading water for, was it an hour?
Yeah, it was something crazy.
It was something crazy. And we went out there, dude. We were out there for days. And I've had multiple competitions, whether it was in the water at the pool or in the lake with people just like, dude, how long can you tread water?
We used to do that growing up in the pool.
Oh, yeah. It's always been a thing. Like, you'll go out there and die.
That's what happens when you grow up with not a lot of stuff to do.
We didn't have phones back then.
You're treading water.
Yeah, I mean, dude.
What'd you do before you had switches and phones and PlayStations? Man, I'd go out and tread water. I'd change a tire on some stuff sometimes.
I know what we did. No, our parents traded us out for work.
Yeah.
You got them this weekend? No, you got them this weekend.
Yeah.
We'll send Steven over your way, and then next weekend we need Collin.
Yeah.
We got some stuff to do.
Ever installed skirting on a mobile home? Because I have.
For months.
People ask all the time, like, well, hey, do you know how to do this? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I've done it before. How do you know how to do that? I don't know. My parents didn't pay for stuff when I was growing up. We just had to do everything.
We had money to get stuff, but not to keep stuff maintained. We did all the maintaining ourselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had a nice car, but my God, you're not going to pay somebody to change the oil on that thing. How dare you?
Dude, but not only that, though, dude, there's a big benefit, man. You tore apart transmissions and you've done all kinds of stuff, man.
Yeah, not always successfully, but I've You know,
You
I'm
know,
definitely not afraid to try to do
I
something.
think the problem was your first transmission you did worked out really well.
Aced it, nailed it. Still running, still great. Second one worked. Second one did too.
But then we started with some basic Chevy transmissions, some
Mhm.
turbo 350s, some good easy. I would say easy. They're still complicated.
Yeah,
But man, they only get more complicated
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
And I'm not a transmission guy.
neither am I.
but you almost, I tell Mila, my daughter, all the time in basketball games, if you make a 3, stop shooting them.
Yeah.
Because people's only going to remember the one you
Yeah.
make. But if you make 1 and then miss 4, they're only going to talk about the 4 you miss.
Yeah.
So stop. Kind of the same with transmission.
Yeah.
You get one that works, stop.
I'm a transmission builder.
I did 1. That's all I need.
Successful.
Hey, that's it. And you've built some motors too, haven't you?
I've worked on a lot of motors. I haven't completed one from scratch to finish. But
When you say from scratch, you're talking about like a short block that has nothing on it, just an empty block.
Yeah, I've
that you built
not
up.
taken a bare block, and not that it's. I mean, it's not outside of my realm of capabilities. I think I could do that.
Again, I've never done it, but I didn't realize how much you actually take to the machine shop and that they do.
Yeah.
That you consider. When people say, "Yeah, I built an engine," I'm like, "Well, yeah, but the
Yeah.
machine shop did the majority of it."
Yeah, they did a lot. You assembled an engine.
You told the machine shop, "I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Get it ready for me."
Yeah.
And you just go pick it up and put stuff in.
Yeah,
You got to check your clearances and all your stuff, but
Seriously?
oh yeah, yeah. It's not as complicated as what I mean. It is. People can do it better, but in the actual just the basis of doing it, the machine shop does all the work.
I would argue that that's like saying, people that build houses don't actually build houses. Somebody else chopped the wood down. Somebody milled that lumber. Somebody there's a lot of stuff you don't do. You still built it.
You did, and I'm not saying you
I
don't.
wouldn't call them a house assembler.
But if you go to the machine shop and you say, "I need this. Here's what I'm putting in it," then they get it all squared
Yeah.
away for you, right?
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
not an engine builder, but
yeah, that's
or
the gist
you
of
just
it.
go buy a blueprint engine. It works out a lot better. But
Yeah, sometimes.
I just go to Rusty Wallace Hyundai and just pick me up a new
you
car.
just go buy a new car is what most people do.
I mean, unless I'm
not-
building a race car, I've
I'm
got
not
an old.
most people, but
Yeah, I've got 2 engine blocks. They're short blocks. One's a long block in my storage, man. I'm ready to build them, but
yeah.
dude, there's a lot of work that goes into them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, We got lots of projects at home.
Well,
I think that's probably part, the schedule most pilots have is, we work half the time. We work 7 days on and then we're off for 7 days, or we work 2 weeks and then we're off for 2 weeks. So that gives you a lot of free time to start projects that you may never finish or try to figure out how to do something that you have no business doing.
who was I telling? I was telling somebody. I said, "Man, whenever I start getting pressure at home about things I've not finished,
Come
I
over to
always
the
try to
house,
come
man.
to Colin's
Yeah.
house." They're like, "Look what he's not finished yet. I'm doing pretty good."
Yeah. What do you think you might want to do? Because I've done it. I've started it. Definitely started it.
Dude, I think just the things that you've started is pretty impressive. But
I-
it's kind of the same as you go into pilot school, man. You just decide what you're going to do and you do it.
That's one of the things that I decided that I was going to do and followed through and stuck with it. The whole moving 700 miles away and I kind of committed to it at that point.
You
It was
also
a big-
moved to like right on the beach almost. I mean, it was
Yeah, I mean it was nice. It was
yeah.
definitely could have went to worse places, but
But since you're not a real pilot,
right.
it's a good thing, dude, because those planes are falling out of the sky, turn it upside down.
Yeah, they are.
And when they take death falls, they just fall. Like,
Yeah.
there's no emergency way to land those like a helicopter.
Not true, but yeah.
Well, then talk me through it. What do you mean?
I mean, you can. So there's not an aircraft in the sky that you can't land without. Like,
I think of like paper airplane. When it runs out of projection, it just falls.
yeah, but again, there's not an aircraft in the sky that is flying around that they haven't already worked out all of the emergency procedures for this aircraft. Like, I'm sure there's some things that nobody's gonna, expect to happen that could happen that just ruins your day, right? But an engine failure on any aircraft isn't the end of the world. Like everybody,
Even
that
an airplane?
especially an airplane, most of those have at least 2 engines or more.
And how are these things falling out of the sky and turning upside down?
I
mean, I'm not asking you to
You are-
explain it
yeah,
to
I'm
me,
not-
but like
That's the-
helicopters, you
that's
say
the
in a death
NTSB's.
fall, you can save it. Like,
Yeah, so
catching on. That's
I'm
all.
going to
Yeah.
start this conversation with accident investigations are the NTSB's problem, not mine. I'm not going to sit here and tell you exactly what happened because I have no idea. I'm definitely not going to be an armchair quarterback. That I'm not.
It's
the
not Monday
NTSB.
morning.
I
Yeah.
don't know what happened. Let's start with that. I don't know. I wasn't in the cockpit. It wasn't me. I don't know. Now, you know, 100 different things that lead up to every accident. Like there's never one thing that leads to something like that happening. And I don't even know what we're talking about. Are we talking about the one that flipped? Are we talking about?
Dude,
it
doesn't seem like, just in general, there
Yeah.
seems to be more airplane accidents right now than there's been since I've been alive.
That's a coincidence, I think, for the most part.
Maybe we
But
just
I
don't
don't-
hear about them.
I don't know
Maybe.
that. I don't know that that's a coincidence. I'm not the NTSB.
Right. We're not on a conspiracy theory here, are we? We can be.
We can be like, you know. Anyway, we can start down some holes, but
You had one that hit a helicopter.
or the helicopter hit it.
Hold on, is that how it happened?
I wasn't
Wasn't that
there.
an air traffic control issue?
I do. Whoa. Stop.
Are you trying to get this podcast flagged?
Sorry. We're going to mark this at the 32-minute mark.
It's
We're
a
going to
rewind
have to do this.
button. No, but seriously, it
So-
was.
So that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. There are a chain of events that occurs with every accident. And you know, I've seen several people on social media trying to dissect this
Mhm.
accident. And
When you say several people, you're talking about like professionals,
yeah,
people that should
pilots, air traffic controllers, people
Yeah.
that I know are dissecting this accident. And they're going, oh well. And this is what I mean when I say there's, you know, a chain of events. The helicopter allegedly, I don't know. I've not read any
know. Have they released it yet?
official report. I didn't read it. I don't know if they've released a preliminary report. I don't know. So I haven't read it.
Of course.
But I'm told that the helicopter was, you know, at the wrong altitude. He was flying higher than he was supposed to be. He was on the wrong side of the river than he was supposed to be. He was, you know, doing whatever. Excuse me. If, you know, was he on NVG's night vision goggles? Was he not? Was he, you know, did the airplane get lost in the city lights because he was at a different altitude? What was going on?
Does
were
anybody
they-
know what height they were at? What
Were-
altitude?
I was told 375 feet, I think I read somewhere.
Dude,
but
that's low, right?
It's pretty low, but it's not uncommon.
You're talking about flying at 2,500 feet?
You're in an airspace that requires different altitudes for different things
Okay.
going on, you know. So I'm not, again,
Of course, we're just looking
I
at
get
different
what you're
scenarios.
saying
Yeah,
there, though, is
so
all these things.
yeah, they could have been, for all I know, these two pilots in the helicopter were staring at each other, talking about what they did over the weekend. The airplane was tipped or was, you know, banked at an angle. Maybe they couldn't see the helicopter. They were, I've also heard people saying, oh, well, they were circling to land, which is, you know, they were under IFR rules. Well, if they were circling to land, they were following VFR. They were visual, so they should have been looking outside. I don't know whose fault it was. I'm not going to, again, say it was anybody's fault. And then people are saying, oh, well, the air traffic controller was inexperienced. They don't know what they're, you know.
You get accidents,
It's a chain
man.
of events.
You get that one, and then you turn around, you get the one that flipped upside down, the Delta
Yeah.
flight. Like, it's just how many of these can we
Yeah.
have and still feel safe
Yeah,
flying with these professionals that are real pilots?
right. The real ones. Yeah,
That's-
that's the biggest thing.
I
You're
mean,
flying the plane that's doing the life-saving measures, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes. And I've also seen a lot of, you know, people saying, oh, well, we're not going to fly because these airplanes are having accidents. Do you know how many car accidents there are? Like,
every day.
you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
I know I fly a lot of them.
Of course.
But if it were even close, we wouldn't be allowed to fly. Like, it's not even close. It's way more dangerous to drive than it is to fly.
I think driving is one of the most dangerous things that happens in America.
Yeah,
Or
it's-
any country for that
Yeah,
matter.
sure, probably. I don't know.
I mean, I think it'd have to be. What else do you do? Fall down the steps? I mean, that's
I pick up a lot of weird stuff. Like, a lot of weird stuff happens to people, and I, you know,
I fell on that shampoo bottle. Take that out.
yeah. Yep, people fall on weird stuff a lot.
And you had to fly him?
Sometimes. flown weirder than, people falling on stuff. I've flown intentional stuff,
I think it's funny.
I have stories for days about weird stuff that I've flown, and I love like to tell people apart because, when people, I used to think it was super cool that I'm a helicopter pilot. I thought, like that's, a conversation starter, but it is a conversation starter. And that's not always what I want because I'll be like, oh yeah, what do you do? And you tell them and, oh, you mean like in this area, we call it Lifestar. It's that's what we all know, just a helicopter EMS. But you tell people here, like, oh, I fly for Lifestar. And they're like, oh, how exciting. That's crazy. What's the craziest thing you've flown? That's like the first, one or two questions that an adult man will ask me. And then I end up, 30 minutes in a conversation about weird stuff that I've flown.
Dude, that's like, oh, you're a policeman? Oh, have you shot anybody?
Yeah.
Have you seen dead bodies? How many dead bodies you seen? That's your questions? Oh, dude, that's funny. But yeah, I can only imagine that's the first question everybody asks is like, hey, what's some crazy stuff you've seen? But one cool thing you told me that I didn't know is like, I always imagine being a nurse on those aircrafts. Like, man, what if you had a bad pilot? Like somebody you don't trust.
That happens.
But they have a say-so in whether they fly or not, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Anybody on the helicopter can decide we're done flying.
Yeah.
And that means, if I just take off, then I have to turn around and land. If you're in the middle of a flight and they say, I don't feel comfortable continuing in this direction or whatever because of the weather or whatever it may be, you go, okay, turn around and land. Or if you get to the aircraft and they say, you know what, I'm not comfortable. You say, okay, well, we don't start the aircraft. That's fine. It's not my job to try to convince you that we need to fly. I will try my best to give you the reasons why I believe this flight is safe or makes sense. But if at the end of that conversation you're still like, I don't want to fly, again, it's not my job to make you fly. I'm not going to make anybody get in my aircraft.
That's awesome. So I think that's a good plan.
I think that's awesome. But what happens if the people that are waiting on you? What happens to those people?
There's a plan B, right, or C?
So
EMS, I guess, ambulance.
Yeah. So, I mean, once we say no, we're out of the equation. We don't. It's not ours anymore. We don't. I don't want to say we don't care about it, but we don't. It's not. We don't think about it anymore.
I needed to be flown by Lifestar one time, and they said it wasn't safe to fly. They wouldn't come get me.
Yeah. So, the way that it works, normally, like if somebody has an accident or a stroke or a heart attack or any sort of medical issue that they need to be flown for, they call our comm center and they say, we need a helicopter at this location, whatever. And they say, okay, we'll find the closest helicopter because we have just at our program at Lifestar, we have 5 helicopters surrounding, Knoxville. And they'll say, okay, well, the closest one is Lifestar 2, which is my helicopter. They'll call us. They'll tone us out. We'll get a tone and we'll say, hey, we got a flight. They don't say anything other than flight to Campbell County or Scott County or whatever surrounding county. And you say, okay, I'm going to check the weather because that's what, as a pilot, that's the first thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
Can I legally go? Because I have weather minimums that I have to follow. And without getting into, what all capabilities the different aircraft have, we fly IFR. So we can fly into the clouds. So if it's a cloudy day, the chances of us flying are better than some. So they'll say, can you fly? And you say, yeah, I can fly. Or no, I cannot fly. If you say no, that's the end of it. You don't hear anything else about it. You're done. I have no idea what I'm picking up when I accept a flight or decline a flight. I don't know who it is. I don't know what's going on. All I know is flight. That's all I know. My job is fly from A to B. Not to sound like, instant, like I don't care, but I don't care. My job is to fly the helicopter. So,
I mean, years ago, we'd set up many LZs, landing zones, and set it all up, prepare for it, and then Lifestar or whoever just say, we can't do it due to whatever. And you just go ground and just send them on the ambulance. It's not normally a big deal.
It's not normally. So, in this case, once we take off, they'll say, okay, you're going to go to these coordinates or this landing zone or this whatever. You're going to pick up, and then they'll tell us what we're picking up, whether it be a stroke or a motor vehicle accident or collision or whatever. And then they'll say, they'll give us some more details that, again, don't matter to me.
But it's good you don't have it when you're making that initial decision.
Then that's the thing. Yeah. Like, they don't want us making a decision based on emotion. They just want us to make an objective decision whether we can or cannot take that flight. If they said, hey, we got a flight out of Anderson County or Knox County, it's, Savannah, and I would be more inclined to try to take that flight, right? And I would be like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I'll do it.
Or it's a juvenile, 9-year-old girl.
Yeah, I don't want to know that. I don't want that to be part of my decision. Fortunately, they don't tell us after the fact either, like when we decline it, Okay, well, there's a dying baby.
Thanks, man. I'm never going to sleep now.
All right, yeah. Let me check again. And I've had that happen to me before, where I've been on duty and somebody called me and said, hey, you're about to get a call for this person that you know.
And
I'd be like, oh, dang, okay. Can you do that flight? And I'd be like, well, I could have made this decision a lot easier 37 seconds ago.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Yeah, and I did the flight, and I did it legally. Fortunately, I was still made an objective decision, but had the circumstances been different, it would have been tough. Can you not take this flight because this is somebody you know? So,
dude.
And my dad flew on Lifestar. It'd been tough to be sitting there and know that you couldn't do that. You know what I mean? So.
Now, as a pilot, do you even see who comes on and what the deal is?
So our helicopter, I'm fortunate in that I have a curtain that kind of separates me from everything. I don't see anything behind me, which is where the patients are. Some of the helicopters are a little bit smaller than what I fly, and the patient is like beside the pilot and they're staring at feet. And I don't know how many feet you've seen. Don't know what you're into, but I don't
want to see feet.
I've seen a lot of nasty feet. Like I've helped load a lot. I've helped put patients here and there or whatever, and I see a lot of really gross feet. So if you're watching this, foot hygiene is important. Antifungals, files, whatever you got to do to get them things under control. Do it.
The last set of feet I saw was somebody trying to sell a mirror. Like, they took a picture.
On Marketplace.
We had a mirror that we were trying to sell not long ago, and I told Terry, I said, let's just throw it away. I can't take a picture of this thing.
You can't take a picture of a mirror.
Get rid of
somebody's either going to see you or whatever you got sitting in the background of that picture, and there's something somebody's going to hone in on. And
let's just get rid of it. We don't need it.
What was that thing?
Yeah. I saw the picture. It was outside of a storage unit. This girl was standing right in front of it and took the picture. And like, man, there's no way you could do that. How can you not see that?
Yeah. Mirrors are.
Yeah. But squirrel.
I don't think a lot of people, think today I'm going to fly on Lifestar or on a helicopter. So I'm going to make sure I give myself a pedicure.
I feel like you should live every day though with
you would think so.
Good toe hygiene.
But how many times have you got in your car in your PJs? You're like, nah, I'm not going to get out. I'm just going to wear this and go there. And
I think that's okay. PJ's okay.
That's the time you get in the accident. You're standing in the middle of the intersection waiting on the cops, and you're standing there in your PJs.
I'll also say this. Sometimes it doesn't matter because you get in a helicopter and you just poop all over yourself, and now you're flying to Knoxville. It happens all the time.
Mila, my daughter, when she was, she couldn't have been 7 or 8. Terry went out to the gas station late at night, and they were in the minivan, and they got hit by a big truck pulling in the gas station as they were leaving. Mila immediately says, Mom, do we have to get out? Because I didn't put any underwear on because it was late at night, She was like 8. And Terry's like, you'll be fine. Just stay in the car. But I'm like, man, you got to go out every time anticipating to get hit. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that until something like that happens to you. And then you're like, oh, I got to be cognizant of that.
Now I got to clear my bowels before we go out because
you got to poop,
pooping
in the helicopter. Got to make sure I got deodorant on,
Oh, man, there's been times like when you eat something.
Put clean underwear on just in case you don't poop.
Yeah, you really got to get home. And you're rushing the bathroom and you're thinking, man, if something happened right now, this would be a catastrophe.
Yeah.
It's going to be a mess.
You know how many flights I've been on where I've been like, I really should have went to the bathroom before I left on this flight because I can't just stop. I can't pull over at the gas station. You know what I mean? No. So 2 hours into it, you're like,
oh,
I hope I can make it.
Dude, you almost need a...
or I'm going to have to blame this on the patient.
Yeah, you have to...
they did it again.
What's the bag you get?
The sick bag?
No, the pee bag or
The go bag?
Colostomy bag? Or?
No, just
Catheter. A catheter.
Oh,
yeah, you have to get catheterized while you're flying, man. That'd be awful.
I think he's more worried about the opposite end.
Both are pretty serious as you get older.
Well,
the more water I drink too, the less I can hold it.
I could lie about, my flight suit being wet. I was drinking up front. I had a Monster or whatever and spilled it.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. Interesting stories. I think we'll do a part 2 of this at some point in time.
Yeah.
We have to.